to take a little bit of a slightly different approach on setting up your and marketing, I guess, your GTC side of things in-house. But
yeah, I guess they are. All of a sudden, I started seeing a lot of pop-ups, a lot of. So, do you know what Aesop's fables are?
No.
I've heard of them.
Okay, so Aesop's fables. 100% everybody in the world has heard about Aesop's fable. The boy that cried wolf, the tortoise and the hare, the lion and the mouse, so those are Aesop's fables. So we have the Aesop of global trade here. So Belinda, I don't know. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's get into how you go about trade, because this is great. By the way, she's not a consultant. She's not an attorney. Anyway, this is really nice and fresh perspective as to how to deal with the current trade situation.
Absolutely. I've been in trade for years, and before then, logistics. I've built my career on food, pharma, and medical device. My next stop is aerospace, I think, just seeing how hard and difficult it is to get in and out of the country. What I've noticed when I first started in trade was the communication was, how do we get a seat at the table? How do we get heard? How do we get valued? And all of that really changed a couple years ago, about 2017, 2018. We all of a sudden got a seat at the table, right? People started paying attention to us, who we were, what we could bring to the table, what our value was outside of just, can you classify this or get my thing out of customs, right? And, when I talk to my husband, who is not in trade, he glazes over. He falls asleep. He gets bored quickly. And that's the same with a lot of our departments, that we work with. They're not experts in trade compliance. So how do you reach them? How do you explain and raise the awareness without boring them to tears? Because we can go into details upon details, and if a comma is here, it means that. If there's a semicolon, it means this, and we can go into theirs, and we love that, right? But everybody else in supply chain and legal and procurement, that's not their cup of tea. So how do we relate? And that's where the stories and the quizzes and the Friday quotes, all trying to change the perception of who we are, that we're approachable, we're not the police, we don't want to give everybody tickets, we really want to be a partner, and how do we connect with them?
Well, with what you've got, that's a good segue into, because like I said, in the beginning here, everybody's just worn out.
Yes.
And part of it is that people have to spend so much energy trying to communicate their message on, what does this mean? Okay, let's just say the UK-US trade deal. All right, now what does that mean? Does that mean something I'm going to have to pay more duty or whatever? And so you go on and deal with things, and it's like, all right, well, I got to translate the complexity of international trade compliance, whether imports or exports, into more layman terms. Not that people are, ignorant about it. It's just that this isn't their ballywag, as Lalo said. So as you look at that, is that, how do you go about doing it? I mean, you've got a scenario there of telling stories, I guess, or explaining it, giving somebody something. That's where I always will say, most compliance folks, when I have dealt with people in different meetings and to resolve an issue, in the past when I've consulted with them or tried to explain and educate a department or whatever, most people just don't get it. Like you said, it's the deer in the headlight look that everybody seems to understand. It's like, okay, I've lost them. How do you bridge that gap? I mean, to me, compliance people are not good at marketing their own department.
No.
Because they don't get outside their bubble.
One of the things that I do is I follow a lot of entrepreneurs and how they're building their small business. What does that look like? What kind of marketing, what kind of buy-in do they need? How are they reaching people? And I started to transfer that over to my department, my company. I started treating my department as a small business inside of a very large one. How do I get people's attention? The first decision was, I don't want to make 3,000, 4,000 experts. The goal is not to create GTC specialists. It's really to raise awareness and have those red flags go up. So what we started to do years back at various companies was we were answering these questions, solving these problems, but you would only do it for one group. Like you would, if legal would call, you'd answer the question, or if supply chain called, you'd answer the question, or a particular site, and it wasn't reaching the broader audience. So what we started to do was we would collect all these questions and problems we've solved, and we would put them in generic terms, and it became the Wednesday quiz. And the way that we would approach it was one answer was legitimate. And the other ones were like, throw that away. Who needs that documentation? Or some silly file 13. Like, and, people started to engage with those. We did them every Wednesday. No department names, nobody called out, just a general question. And what we found was people started, when we would solve problems in the future, they would say, am I going to make the Wednesday quiz? Do you think this problem will make it? And they just they bought into our program. Right. And so we did that. And then it grew into Friday quotes, because so often trade compliance departments are either seen as, they're just over there, they don't talk to anybody, or they're the police officer, right? We get a very bad rep. So doing a Friday quote, really trying to tie that into how approachable we are, or what our vision for departments are. And I've done this across multiple companies. It just makes them approachable to them, so that if they have a problem, they're like, oh, Belinda's nice, let me call. And sometimes that solves all the problems. It's just that one phone call. And then we started doing like Tuesday thoughts, bringing people in and connecting. But more importantly, we started to find things that we could connect on, like holidays. I've had employees in China. Well, nobody talks about the Chinese holidays. So how do we connect that to trade compliance? Well, we want to get our shipments in because customs closes, and then you'll have delays. And we can tell the story through the holiday and telling about that, but also bringing in these GTC components to raise awareness.
Let me stop for a second, though. One of the things that you're doing that I think is absolutely phenomenal, you've got people now that are interested, they'll call up and whatever, but you're making a point to reach out to these different departments to establish a relationship.
Absolutely.
So that they are calling you. That's right there is something that you've got to take. You took the effort to reach out, to establish that communication link, to establish a relationship, to get things flowing back and forth. And then you're making it fun so that it's like the compliance people are not those old stuff, fogies over there that just always say no. It's like you're making it a fun situation, right?
Absolutely. And tying it back to things that we have in common. So the Olympics, a lot of counterfeit stuff came through at the Olympics. So you can tie something that somebody knows all too well about. It's in the news everywhere. Tie it back to global trade. We've done that with holidays. We've done that with national events. We've done that with television shows. I did a post the other day. Does it feel like everybody's on the set of Survivor? A lot of people have seen Survivor over the last 25 years. You can connect it to that. Right. So by putting those connections and making it more of a easy read, easy training, raising the awareness, giving like 5 bullet points versus 5 pages of reading, really builds it.
Yeah, you've got to filter it down. That's one of the things. I had a phenomenal, absolutely fantastic staff that would, draft up these updates on the emails. And when I first took over the department, it would be like a dissertation. And I'm like, nope, nope, you can't send that. And it was being sent directly from the front line to upper management. And nobody was reading it. I had several in the chain that brought me in and said, Andy, if you could do something about this, I want to know something, but I don't have time to read all that. And the general thought is, well, they have to know this stuff. No, we need to know it.
Yes.
We need to translate it. What's relevant to them? Take out what's the key point. And so it was a painful exercise, yet at the end of the day, the same people who are extremely knowledgeable and they didn't like because I changed up, they were going into the minutia. And I
Having
was like, nope,
citations at the
rewrite it.
bottom.
Yeah, I had everybody send me their stuff before they published it, and they had to come in, and I go, nope, you need to rewrite that. And it was, I had people just yelling at me at times. And I said, I understand it, but that's too much.
Yeah.
And we finally got it down, and they developed the skills to keep it and do the synopsis like what you said, 5 bullet points. We got more done that way. I don't know how you do that in the industry, but your storytelling sounds fantastic. So somebody can relate to it, and then they can communicate in their own layman ways and pushing the issue forward.
I think with our, the teams that I've managed is there's different communication per audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a communication
Yes.
you're going to do to the general audience. And then also there's a communication to executive leadership that I don't think people train on. And I think it's a confidence thing for a lot of GTC team members.
Mm-hmm.
They think they have to prove that they know what they're doing. And leadership's like, I trust you. Give me 2 options and tell me which one you think is better at the end of the day and why, or, a quick synopsis.
Right.
We've got to get to the point where they trust us. And that's what you're going to give. Now, you may make a backup document in case they have extra questions for yourself. CYA all day long. I think that's great. But when you're talking to leadership, they just don't have the kind of time to go into the level of knowledge that took you to get to the 3 or 5 bullets. Mm-hmm. So my team, and the teams that I've managed forever always keep that backup just in case. So if the extra questions come, whether that's on a presentation and we put appendix in, or we just make another document for ourselves to back it up. But knowing your audience, and that's a key that I think, especially when you're developing team members, is they're not writers, right? And there's very few classes that are just at that general level that says, here's how you write, a blog post. This is how you write to executive leadership. This is how you put together this for the team. Because my team or whoever I'm reporting to should have that level of knowledge down to the very little bit. But that's not the same to upper management. And I think that's the difference, is teaching your team how to be confident, but back themselves up.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, but with that in mind, Belinda, is there like some kind of story or something? Not a story, but like an occurrence within your company that may have helped, like, them understand, not your immediate team, of course, but the rest of your company understand what it is that you all are doing and why, like, kind of get them on the same page. And it's like, like, make them have that aha moment. Like, is there a situation that you can point to that can show that?
I think when you go into any company, and I've built trade compliance teams at multiple now. This is my 3rd round building it from scratch. You have to build up credibility. At the end of the day, you're not getting trust right out the gate. So working with your communications team, working with your legal team to say, this is what I want to teach people, and figuring out the right method to get to that, to the different levels. Because in my case, I've always used internal social media. Right. So Viva Engage now, it used to be Yammer. Building that repository up there, they can always search it, but you have to build the credibility up that you're not going to go crazy, because it is still a workplace, even though it's an internal social media. And then within the company, as you're building credibility with your legal teams and your leadership, your communications team, you can get it out within your internal communications. You can get stories out. You can partner with other groups like procurement or logistics. Why do they work well? Why do they need each other? And you can showcase those stories, throughout the entire organization to bring.
Do you have an example of like a story that you're talking about where, is it a particular situation, or are you highlighting or promoting a product or something that's got to have parts imported, or when you're saying stories, how do you develop that?
typically it's really telling the story about global trade, just rules and terminology and what does it take. So one of the posts that I made the other day was when 10 steps turns into 10,000 clicks. And 10 steps, I've had leadership in the past years before say, I don't understand why it takes so long for a free trade agreement to be reviewed. It's 10 steps. Absolutely, it's 10 steps. Once you gather all your information, you've started to review it, you start putting it in the right format and looking at the rules and yeah, it is 10 steps, but it's 10,000 clicks and collecting and your analysis. So really just trying to tell those stories that although it's 10 steps on a slide at a conference or in a webinar, that doesn't mean that we can go into our our desk and we're just decision is made in 5 minutes. It's trying to tell that story about what we do, that there's more to the story than what you see on the a presentation slide.
It's like when I use ChatGPT, I always when it's a very complicated topic or any AI, I always say, "Can you explain this to me as if I was a 10-year-old?"
We've
Well,
used that quote.
and to your point, there's also you make a great example. There is that when somebody's doing a presentation, I can remember sitting through many of them as well as preparing them and providing a presentation to upper management or whatever, and you've got these charts and graphs that are showing trends and
Mhm.
bar graphs and line graphs and you're showing averages to actual performance of widgets. There's so many items that are done per hour or per day or per week or whatever it may be, and you look at and your presentation may be only, let's say, 5 slides, and you're hitting your performance, but those slides represent a tremendous amount of
Yes.
statistical research and data and whatnot, and gathering all of that up. So yeah, to your point, and that may be something, folks, in listening to it, when you see somebody presenting to you, when your staff comes to you or somebody else is presenting on something and you're seeing it, Belinda's point of those slides look like there's just a few steps, but in behind that is a tremendous number of hours of research. And I love how you say 10 steps equates to 10,000 clicks of gathering information. That's a great point.
You know, educating our leadership or our peers, so often they're like, I don't know why it takes you more than 2 minutes to do HTSs. We could just Google it. And I'm like, oh, please, no, no Google. There's a whole process that we could go through and train people on for how to do tariff classifications. But we've got to educate them that you want us to take our time, you want us to look at all the explanatory notes, and they'd be like, well, what's an explanatory note? And trying to find those stories that will explain why it takes so long and without boring them to tears
Right.
with all the details. I think that's what I've been trying to do to brand the departments that I've run, is really how do I connect with them and educate them without boring them.
One of the things that comes to mind is that I when a purchase order is issued, and it goes out to a factory, and so you're going to be importing 100,000 widgets at maybe 1,000 at a time, and all that, and whatever the case is, one of the things that comes to mind, I ask compliance people, I said, when your supplier prepares the paperwork, do you trust the harmonized tariff number that's on the paperwork? Oh, absolutely not. We would never do such a thing. And I'm going, then why not? Oh, well, we don't know where it came from. I said, well, okay, then, why is that the case? You've issued a purchase order. And so it takes an effort to reach out to your purchasing
Yeah.
department and work with them. But to your point, what I was just going to say is trying to educate them to say, look, you may have found a great widget, a great source to
Mhm.
manufacture this widget. Um, But when that purchase order is issued, we need you to put some added information in there. Now, here's the one thing. One of the things is like, well, our suppliers don't know, and it's like, well, your suppliers seem to know what to ship, where to ship it, when to ship it, and what to put on the paperwork so they get paid.
Yeah.
They seem to know what they're doing with that. That sounds to me like the compliance area is deficient in getting the required information to the purchase on that purchase order, so that, hey, when this widget is issued, or when this purchase order is issued for this widget, here's the additional info. Here's how you need to describe it. Here's how the harmonized tariff number needs to go. Here are the declarations. And with that takes a lot of work to do. It seems very simplistic, but also getting upper management to pull in the purchasing, the logistics, transportation folks, and the compliance folks, all three together. And even I would say go so far as in the IT, and have all four of those areas share goals. But it has to start with usually the compliance people going, this is why it's so important.
Mhm.
And telling the story of like, okay, you have a harmonized tariff number that comes, or a shipment hasn't been classified. Here's the repercussions of what happens when it doesn't have it on there. And here's the repercussions when it has the wrong one put on
Oh,
there.
yeah. Well, I think educating procurement and logistics is not everybody has a global trade team. I know it's 2025.
Right.
Not everybody, they'll lean on their logistics or their procurement department, and they're not experts, right? They're probably using Google. What is my widget classified as? Plastic piece, perfect, right? And it worked. I love that saying. It worked last time. Yeah, okay, great. I think it's telling, raising that awareness that not everybody invests in a trade compliance team, so we need to double check, particularly when you're the importer of record, right? Because you're the one responsible for that trade data going to the government. You need to be able, and the duties paid and things like that. So I think it's educating them that we can't always trust. Sometimes we need to trust but verify. That has to be part of it. And I think not waiting on leadership to bring everybody together. So, in the
Yes.
companies that I've worked for, I've scheduled those meetings on a quarterly basis to say, this is what I'm doing. How do I connect with you guys? And here's what I value. Do you value it? And how can we work on it together? Because if not, they don't know. Everybody has different priorities. So, like logistics is, how do I get it from A to B at the cheapest cost in the right temperature? If temperature is your requirement, or with the right permit, if you're controlled.
Right.
Procurement is all about price. I want the best quality, the best price. So that's their priority. In compliance, our only thing is we want it compliant. Like, we don't care how fast it is. We don't care about the 5 cents. We care about the compliance level. So bringing everyone together and saying, how do we approach this? I think that's always your first step. And just
Well,
educating them that just because our company invested in this doesn't mean the next one did.
yeah, well, and I was just going to say, in starting that out, it's like, due to time here, we're going to have to, start wrapping up. But I would say it sounds like, again, you're not waiting on upper management. You've
No.
got your department, you're taking ownership of it, and you're reaching out to the other areas. I love how you put that is, this is what I'm doing. How'd you put that? Is like, is this of any
How do we
importance to you?
Yeah.
connect?
Yeah. How do we
Yeah.
connect? Yeah.
There's
And
I was going to say, Belinda, for those that may have or may be struggling with trying to implement or do something, like they're like, I'm not a storyteller or anything like that, and they might want to do this. I kind of want to recommend. I don't know if you've read it or if you know of it. There's a really really good book called Lead with a Story.
Hmm.
oh,
I've not read that one yet.
So Lead with a Story is a book called. It's from a former executive from Procter and Gamble. So it's double entendre, right? So lead your meetings with a story, meaning like start with a story, and
Mhm.
of course lead as in like being a leader, by storytelling, right? So it's a really good book. It talks about how you can be a good storyteller. There's some really good stories in there, but and I want to say one other thing. It's kind of a little funny thing that we have an instructor and a guest that has been on our podcast several times, Derry Eichstein. She says, I'm not I'm not above bribery. I can cook up a really good batch of cookies to make people convince them. But
Yeah.
anyway, so
Yeah,
anyway,
put
I
that in
just
context, but it's like
You
people
have to
love cookies.
find ways to connect. And one of the things I've told many of my employees is they'll be like, well, I'm not funny like you. Writing is not my natural space. Well, do you want to go up in the corporate world? Because you're going to have to learn to tell the story as you grow. So why don't you take the chance and we'll work on it together to hone your skills and find your perspective, because your perspective is different than me. I try to approach things with humor and
right,
goofiness. That's just my personality, right? But somebody else is very professional and their tone is very different. Let's find your voice. Let's find how you tell stories. And you do it in the safety of having an editor, and you have a safety in the role that you're in so that you can build and grow that without. So by the time you do take that promotion, you're ready for it and you know how to tell those stories.
Outstanding. I had to tell you that is that one thing is, somebody's going to have to maybe spend more energy, is the way I
Yes.
put it, in getting outside their comfort zone to deal with something. The personality assessments, DISC is a good one,
Mm.
DISC. If somebody hasn't used that before, do it yourself and take that survey, so it'll help you understand what personality, how you process information,
Yes.
and then your audience and how you can communicate with others. That is a good thing to look in this. But I got to say, I just pulled up Lalo, what you were talking about, lead with a story. This goes to exactly what Belinda's saying
exactly.
here, and that is apparently it's written by Paul Smith,
Paul
is what it
Smith, yeah.
appears.
It's a great book, everybody. If you really want to start there, it's a really good book. It really is, and just read that book. Read all the stories he has. Procter and Gamble. In fact, Procter and Gamble, I think he has a story in there. I read it many years ago. I read it like 2 or 3 times already, but I think he says something about how they discouraged PowerPoint presentations. They hated PowerPoint presentations. If anything, the PowerPoint presentation was 1 or 2 slides that had the person's name who's presenting or talking, and thank you, something like that. I don't remember exactly, because they encouraged that you held a meeting by storytelling almost. I mean, not necessarily only storytelling, but get to the business at hand, but also mostly storytelling. Apparently P&G produced very, very good storytellers, business storytellers. So
P&G is in my home city of Cincinnati, so I'm pretty excited about P&G. But I'll have to read that. That's one of the books from my nerdiness that I have not read yet, so
yeah.
I
Wow,
will get on that. But
that's
take a leap.
outstanding.
Like, this is my first podcast. So sometimes you go out of your comfort zone, and sometimes it's going to be a hit. And sometimes someone's going to be like, next time do X, Y, and Z, see if you can do it a little different. And that's okay to try and tweak until you become successful at it.
Mhm. Well, Belinda, thank you so much for being on the show today. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice little fresh new look at something, and it challenges all of us, even those that are maybe seasoned, those that are new into the area, whatever. And Lalo, man, this is outstanding. Lead with Stories. That actually is a resource to actually help do what Belinda is saying. So I love that.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. It's been fun, and you're right. It went quick.
I told you, Belinda. Next thing you know, you blink, and next thing you know, the show's over. So, but we will have you back. Okay, so
Yes.
so go
Sounds
go
good.
and ask the powers that be to give you a what is it,
Permission.
a open approval of coming back to our show.
Sounds great. Well, thank
Awesome.
you guys, and I'll see you at the next conference.
Yes, for
And
sure.
I'll stop by and say hello.
Awesome.
Folks, listen, we appreciate your support, your listenership. Like us, share us, follow us, do whatever you got to do on that. We really need your support to continue on. We have been expanding into a lot of countries as far as the listenership. So, again, we hope that everybody's having a great day, and hopefully this is some good information for you. So, have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Thank you.